Hey there everyone, this is Jeff Murrin. Thanks for joining me again as we continue our discussion of the Iliad by Homer, specifically the Robert Fagel's translation of the book. And in this particular video, I want to focus on book 23, which is titled Funeral Games for Patroclus. Now, there are games in each of the books that have to do with the Trojan War. Here, we're going to take a look at this one. There are games in which Odysseus engages in while he's on his travels. They aren't funeral games, but they are contests nonetheless. There are funeral games mentioned in the Aeneid as well. And often I've just skipped over that chapter when teaching my classes. This one, however, comes at such a pivotal moment and deals with something so significant that has been building up for so long that I feel like it really does demand our attention. Also, we will see that some of the conflicts that have been going on throughout this entire book are actually finally laid to rest as a result of some of these competitions here. And so I think there are some important lessons to learn about the Greeks and about these particular characters that we've been following throughout this entire time while taking a look at this. Also, it's sort of this moment to breathe from what we just witnessed, the crazed, raging on fire Achilles just coming so strong at Hector and putting an end to Hector, and the intensity of that, and then where we're going to go after this particular book as well. So we kind of get this this moment to take a breath, consider some things, resolve some things, and then move on to the final book, book 24. All right. And so it's interesting too with these games. These are, funerals aren't these celebratory, competitive times for us, especially, the United States, which is usually a very competitive place. We put things aside and just reserve the time for thoughtful introspection about the person who has passed. And that does happen here. We will see a tender side to Achilles here, and then that tender side of Achilles will go on in sort of, it'll shade how he deals with some of the other people in their competitions. And so this is odd, but it provides us some insight that is very useful, I think. All right, so the games we have, we have chariot racing, which gets the lions. I'm going to keep that motif going. The lion's share of our attention here, and then after that there is a boxing match, a wrestling match, a foot race, a duel, iron toss, which a lot of times when I hear the iron toss I think of something like the shot put. And we have archery, and then we have a spear toss, which I think is the javelin event in the Olympics. And this is it feels like we're kind of watching the Olympics. Of course, everybody's from Greece. It's not an international event just yet. Anyway, so let's go ahead and let's take a look, and I'm going to begin reading at the start of the book here, where it says, "So they grieved." Okay, we've just finished off the chapter before, and now we're dealing with, we've got the dead body of Hector. We still have the dead body of Patroclus. All right. It says, "So they grieved at Troy while Achaea's troops pulled back. Once they reached the warships moored at Hellespont, the contingent scattered, each man to his own ship. But Achilles still would not dismiss his Myrmidons. He gave his battle-loving comrades strict commands. Charioteers, in fast formation, friends to death, we must not loose our teams from the war cars yet. All right. All in battle order, drive them past Patroclus. A cortege will mourn the man with teams and chariots. These are the solemn honors owed to the dead. And then, after we've eased our hearts with tears and dirge, we free the teams and take supper there. All right, so he's still commanding his Myrmidons to keep them at the ready until he deems it's right. And it's interesting here at the very bottom of 559, we say, 3 times they drove their full maned stallions round the body, Myrmidon soldiers mourning, and among them Thetis stirred a deep desire to grieve, and the sands grew wet with tears. The armor of fighting men grew wet with tears, such bitter longing he roused. And so Achilles speaks to the dead body of Patroclus. He says, "Farewell, Patroclus." This is about line 22. "Farewell, Patroclus, even there in the house of death. Look, all that I promised once, I'm performing now. I've dragged Hector here for the dogs to rip him raw. And here in front of your flaming pyre, I'll cut the throats of a dozen sons of Troy, all in their shining glory, venting my rage on them for your destruction." All right. It says, so he triumphed again, and he was bent on outrage, on shaming noble Homer, as if that's going to set anything right. Patroclus is gone. He's going to sacrifice, he says here, and we will see this happen, 12 Trojans, on the funeral pyre of Patroclus, or at least, he will sacrifice them then and there, okay? And so what I see interesting here is the contrast between how he wants to mourn and have all kinds of specific, beautiful memories, rites and rituals and things for Patroclus, but not allowing the other thing to happen in regards, for the Trojans, for their fallen Hector, okay? Hector, be damned, all right? We don't need Hector. Hector is the problem, all right? We continue on page 561 to see some side of Achilles that we haven't seen before, all right? This is, let's say, line 560, on page 561, line 65, 66, 67, somewhere in there. It says, Achilles lay down now, groaning deep from the heart, near his Myrmidon force, but alone on open ground, where over and over rollers washed along the shore. He will become overcome with sleep. And think about it. He's been at work for quite a while, given the previous book's activities. No sooner had sleep caught him, dissolving all his grief, as mists of refreshing slumber poured round him there. His powerful frame was bone weary from charging Hector straight and hard to the walls of windswept Troy. Then the ghost of stricken Patroclus drifted up. So the ghost of Patroclus, and it will say, it looks like Patroclus for, it's not the ghost taking on a different form as the gods often do. This is Patroclus coming to speak to Achilles. Line 81. Sleeping, Achilles? You've forgotten me, my friend? You never neglected me in life, only now in death. So all of the stuff that that Achilles has done to try to take down Patroclus's killer, to bring Hector to his knees and to the house of death, he falls asleep because he's exhausted. And Patroclus is like, are you serious? You never neglected me in life, only now in death. Now you're neglecting me. I don't know about that. Anyway, bury me quickly. Let me pass the gates of Hades. They hold me off at a distance, all the souls, the shades of the burnt-out, deathless, breathless dead. Never to let me cross the river, mingle with them. They leave me to wander up and down, abandoned, lost at the house of death with the all-embracing gates. So there you go. That's why I've been saying it's so important that the people who die get the proper burial rites. Okay? It says, the breathless dead, they will never let me cross the river, mingle with them, unless I get the proper rites, the proper rituals, the proper burial. Okay? They will leave me to wander. Okay? I will never actually be able to cross over unless I get what I'm supposed to get as far as the burial goes. And think about all of the Trojans that Achilles just let wash away down a river. The thing is, what we're seeing here is it's not really, he's taking the concerns of Patroclus while just letting the others. So whenever he kills the people, kills the Trojans in that way, he's not just, forcing them to die there on the spot, but it's that they're doomed for eternity to wander. So it's not just like, oh, I fear death, but it's also, you're going to fear death, and you're also going to have to wander for eternity on top of that. All right. It says, oh, give me your hand, I beg you with my tears. Never, never again shall I return from Hades once you have given me the soothing rites of fire. Soothing fire. Ah, that's an interesting dichotomy there, isn't it? Never again will you and I, alive and breathing, huddle side by side apart from loyal comrades making plans together. Never. Grim death, that death assigned from the day I was born, has spread its hateful jaws to take me down, and you too. Okay? We know Achilles not going to make it. Your fate awaits you too, godlike as you are, Achilles, to die in battle beneath the proud, rich Trojan walls. But one thing more, a last request, grant it, please. Never bury my bones apart from yours, Achilles. Let them lie together. Let us be buried together, all right? Skipping down to about line 113. Or 112, says, why have you returned to me here, dear brother friend? Why? Tell me what all I must do, and I'll do it. This is Achilles speaking here, okay? Why have you returned to me, and tell me all that I must do, and I will do it. I will obey your demands. Oh, come closer. Throw your arms around each other, just for a moment. Take some joy in the tears that numb the heart. Skipping a line says, but he could not seize them. No, the ghost slipped underground. And I reminded when I spoke to you about the recurring structure of 3 times I did this, but 3 times it didn't work, whatever. Okay, we will see specifically in the Odyssey and in the Aeneid both where Odysseus and Aeneas go to embrace somebody, and that's what happens that 3 times. Embrace somebody, and that body is no longer living. It's a spiritual thing, and it slips right through their hands. And so we have the kind of the beginnings of that right here. All right. We see at the very bottom of page 563 where it says Achilles held the head in tears. So Achilles is holding Patroclus' head. Now think of the last time what we saw whenever he had Homer's head and he let it just flop off the back of his chariot and dragged him behind the chariot. All right, now we have him holding, caressing the head of Patroclus. All right. He says, this was his steadfast friend whom he escorted down to the house of death. All right, and so now we see all the sacrifices, and we see true that Achilles does, slaughter the dozen Trojans that he promised he would. This is the page of top of page 565. He says, he set 2 handled jars of honey and oil beside him, leaned them against the bier, and then with wild zeal slung the bodies of 4 massive stallions onto the pyre and gave a wrenching moan. Okay, so 4 horses he throws on the funeral pyre as well. And the dead Lord Patroclus had fed 9 dogs at table. He slit the throats of 2 of those and threw them on the pyre. And then a dozen brave sons of the proud Trojans he hacked to pieces with his bronze. Achilles' mighty heart was erupting now with slaughter. He loosed the iron rage of fire to consume them all and cried out. Okay, so he's put 4 horses on, 2 dogs, and 12 Trojans. All right. He called his dear friend by name. Farewell, Patroclus. These are his final words to Patroclus. Farewell, Patroclus. Even there in the house of death, all that I promised once I have performed at last. Here are 12 brave sons of the proud Trojans. All. The fire that feeds you devours them all, but not Hector, the royal son of Priam. Hector will never give to the hungry flames. Wild dogs will bolt his flesh. All right. And you can see the word Zephyr on the next page. They need wind to make the fire go, and the winds do come. And it says on line 289, a huge inhuman blaze went howling up in the skies. And I think that's a very interesting term to use. A very curious adjective, I think. An inhuman blaze went howling up. Okay, I don't know if I would ever have thought of a blaze, a fire, as being human anyway, but it wants to let us know that it's an inhuman blaze, and maybe to make sure that since the last or the chapter we saw when he was battling the river, that this isn't Hephaestus coming and doing this. Okay, this is not the work of a god. This is inhuman fire. This is the proper burial that Patroclus is finally getting. He mentions, in 567, Achilles does that he will die soon, and of course, we know that he's not yet finished, that we're not, he's killed Hector, and he's putting his friend Patroclus to rest for eternity, but there's still work to do. Troy's still standing there. Its walls are still erect, and the Trojans are behind it. All right, so we're not yet. We're nowhere near finished. Okay. Now, what we know about the Greeks is the Greeks are always competitive. All right. We see on page 568, we see the list of prizes, and actually, some of the prizes are women. Okay. And we know how they've treated women and how they've considered women up till now. This whole thing began, not the whole thing, well, the whole thing began because of the goddess Eris making, the strife, making the conflict between the female goddesses. But we also know that a lot of death, Greek death, could have been curtailed if there hadn't been this stupid back and forth, this proud competition between Agamemnon and Achilles over girls that they took after they had killed those girls' families. Okay, and so these women are seen as property. They're seen as prizes here. Okay, which is extraordinarily problematic. And the only time that we ever hear from Briseis, the only time she ever speaks, is when she says, "Oh, Patroclus, you were nice to me. You're nice to me," and the way he was going to be nice to her was going to make sure that Achilles married her. That was going to be the way that was going to be nice. The man who killed my family, my brothers, my father, all this kind of stuff. Make sure that he makes me his lawful wife. Oh, you're so nice. It's a type of dynamic between the sexes that just makes very little sense to us in our modern era here, and gives the sense of, yes, where does this idea of the patriarchy stem from, and how does this perpetuate itself? But it was such the extraordinary, the norm for them back then. All right, so we've got page 568, and about line, let's say 313 or so, we see "Let the games begin." All right, and let the games begin the same way that we begin the Olympics now. All right, so we're going to begin with the chariot race. And the chariot race gets a lot of attention here, more so than the other ones do. All right, and so what we find on page 571 is Diomedes is clearly in the lead. All right, Diomedes is in the lead about line 430, let's say 432. It says Apollo all of a sudden raging at Diomedes. Okay, so Apollo is raging at Diomedes while he's in this chariot race. The gods can't just leave them alone to let them, even play games. Apollo's got to get in on some action because he's still holding grudges against the Greeks for, because Apollo, the Trojans were his people. Apollo all of a sudden raging at Diomedes had not knocked the shining whip from his fist. Tears of rage came streaming down his cheeks as he watched Eumelus Eumelus' mares pulling farther ahead and his team losing pace. No whip to lash them on. Okay, so Apollo knocks Diomedes' whip when he's whipping his horses, knocks it out of his hand and is frustrated. Okay, but Athena. So here comes Athena to try to help Diomedes. I mean, against other Greeks? Whatever. Okay, so missing nothing of Phoebus's foul play that robbed Diomedes, sped the gallant captain, handed him back his whip, primed his team with power, and flying after Admetus' son in full immortal fury, the goddess smashed his yoke. Okay, so Diomedes is winning, but he's also getting, headaches from Apollo, but he's also getting help from Athena, all right? We see down here, we have Antilochus versus Menelaus, about line 570, 570-ish is where I am there, and Antilochus is like driving his chariot car right into Menelaus' chariot car. And it says, there Atrides was heading, no room for two abreast, but Antilochus swerved to pass him, lashing his horses off the rack, then swerving into him neck and neck, and Atrides, frightened, yelled out at the man, Antilochus, you drive like a maniac. All right, I say that all the time when I'm on the road. Hold your horses. The track's too narrow here. It widens soon for passing. Watch out, you'll crash your chariot, wreck us both. All right, and then you see that continues on page 573, line 489. Antilochus, no one alive more treacherous than you. Away with you, madman, damn you. How wrong we were when we said you had good sense. You'll never take the prize unless you take the oath. All right, so crazy driving there. All right, we see the end of the race on page 575. It says, in the same breath, Diomedes came on, storming toward them closer. Look, closing, lashing his team nonstop, full shoulder strokes, making them kick high as they hurtled toward the goal. Constant sprays of dust kept pelting back on the driver. The chariot, sheathed in gold and tin, careening on in the plunging stallion's wake, its spinning rims hardly leaving a rut behind the dust. The team thundered in a whirlwind finish. All right, so Diomedes takes it. All right, but watch this thing that happens on the next page, 576, at the very top. But Admetus' son Eumelus came in last of all. All right, someone's got to come in last. That's why I ran cross country. Someone had to come in last. All right. It says, dragging his fine chariot, flogging his team before him. Seeing him there, the swift Achilles, filled with pity. When have we ever seen Achilles filled with pity? All right. Rose in their midst and said these winged words, the best man drives his purebred team home last. Come, let's give him a prize. It's only right, but second prize, of course. Tydeus' son must carry off the first. All right, so he wants to give the person who came in last the second place. How do you think that's going to go over? Okay, Antilochus pretty much says, hell no. Line 601, Achilles was just about to give the man the mare when Antilochus, son of magnanimous old Nestor, leapt to his feet and lodged a formal protest. Achilles, I'll be furious if you carry out that plan. All right, do you really mean to strip me of my prize? So concerned that his team and car were wrecked and the fellow too for all his racing skills. And it's so weird too that Achilles would dare to say, this was someone's prize, but I'm going to give it to this other person, when he was so mad for so long at Agamemnon because Agamemnon wanted to take his prize of Briseis in the first place. It just kind of blows my mind to think, dude, how are you able to do this? Is it showing growth on his part? But is it showing, how are you showing growth on your part when you'll do it for somebody else, but you won't allow the same thing to be done to you, because that would be considered some sort of slight that you would never, ever let up on. You would hold that grudge forever, all right? Why, he should have prayed to the deathless gods. Then he would never have finished last of all. You pity the man? You're fond of him, are you? You have hordes of gold in your tents, bronze sheep, serving girls by the score, and purebred racers too. Pick some bigger trophy out of the whole lot and hand it on to the man, but do it later or now at once and win your troops' applause. I won't give up the mare, the one who wants her. Step this way and try, and he'll have to fight me for, whoever with fists. And it says there, the runner Achilles smiled and gives a consolation prize to Menelaus. Okay, I mean for Eumelus. Sorry, not Menelaus. 6:30, though, we see this continuing on, but now Menelaus rose, his heart smoldering, still holding a stubborn grudge against Antilochus. A crier put a staff in his hands and called for silence, and with all his royal weight Atrides thundered, "Antilochus, you used to have good sense. Now see what you've done, disgraced my horsemanship. You fouled my horses, cutting before me, you with your far slower team." So he's still mad that Antilochus cut him off in the race. All right. Down at the bottom of that, about 4 lines up from the end, it says, "Come stand in front of your team and chariot, grasp the coiling whip that lashed them home. Lay your hands on their manes and swear by the mighty God who grips and shakes the earth, you never block my chariot, not by deliberate foul." Basically saying, I want you to say out loud that you're a cheater. Antilochus, though, get this. Skipping a couple lines, he says, "You're my senior. You the greater man. Well, you know how the whims of youth break all the rules. Our wits quicker than wind. Our judgment just as flighty." He says, "You're right. I'm young. I'm dumb. I don't think things through." All right. And so Menelaus, will say, "Antilochus, now is my turn to yield to you for all my mounting anger." This is on page 578. About line 670 is where I am. "You who were never wild or reckless in the past, it's only youth that got the better of your discretion just this once, but the next time be more careful. Try to refrain from cheating." So we have this interesting conflict resolution to these people who've been holding, we've had grudges held amongst these Greeks for so long. We've got these petty, stupid games, but they're like, you know what, this is a small microcosm type of a view of the bigger picture. And you're right, we young people are kind of stupid sometimes. We don't think things through. And the older person's like, yeah, kind of like, the idea of like, yeah, I was young too. I did some dumb things. I'm not, you're not always like that. So, it's okay. Everything will be fine. Let's just move on. That's life. Okay. They offer an honorary award to Nestor in here, which I think is interesting. And you'll see that sometimes, there are some athletes for certain teams, certain college players or professional players that, after a certain amount of time, they'll come back and they'll honor them for their accomplishments. Or we even in academics do the same thing when we give honorary degrees to people. And we see that, down on towards the bottom of page 578. They give one to Nestor, and Nestor, he takes it on, and then he talks about, oh, if I could just be young again. That's what Nestor's often talking about. It's like, oh, if I could be young again, And so let's move on here. We've got the second match at the bottom of page 580, which is a boxing match. We see the third match, which is a wrestling match, and it says a grueling wrestling match. Okay, so the boxing match starts, down at 580, but it's done within like one section, so it doesn't get nearly the attention that the Chariot Race did. But we have a grueling wrestling match. For the winner, a large tripod made to strike a fire and worth a dozen oxen, so the soldiers reckon. For the loser, he led a woman through their midst. Okay, so the loser of this actually gets a woman, which again blows my mind, because if that's what the loser gets, what was the big deal with the thing with Agamemnon and Achilles to begin with? Okay, Ajax and Odysseus are the ones who are fighting in this wrestling match. About line 800, see Odysseus no more able to trip and bring to ground his man than Ajax could. Odysseus' brawn held out, a stalemate. Okay, so it says at the bottom of that next section on page 582, around 818, line 818, says, "No more struggling, don't kill yourselves in sport. Victory goes to both. Share the prizes. Off you go, so the rest of the men can have a crack at contests." Then we have a foot race. And now this is interesting, okay, this foot race. And that brings, this foot race brings to mind the running that was going on between Hector and Achilles in the previous book. All right, but I'm about line 858. So Odysseus, he's running here. Odysseus prayed in his heart to blazing-eyed Athena. So he's praying about this race that he's on. "Hear me, goddess, help me. Hurry, urge me on." So Odysseus prayed, and Athena heard his prayers. So watch what Athena does here. Ajax slipped at a dead run. Athena trips Ajax. Now watch what happens here. slipped at a dead run. Athena tripped him up right where the dung lay slick from the bellowing cattle the swift runner Achilles slew in Patroclus' honor. Dung stuffed his mouth, his nostrils dripped muck, and shining, long-enduring Odysseus flashed past him. So he falls right... Athena trips Ajax. He falls right in cow poop. All right? And he says, "Foul by heaven, the goddess fouled my finish, always beside Odysseus, just like the man's mother, rushing to put his rivals to the dust." Okay, and we will see when we look at the Odyssey that yes, in fact, Athena does do a lot for Odysseus. We see a duel for Sarpedon's arms, okay, and Diomedes is there named the winner. We see the iron toss, and Polypidus wins that one. Archery, Teucer, he had his Aristeia where he went on a killing spree, takes the kind of thing. So we have the last event, okay, which is the spear throwers. And this is very interesting, and this is where I want to leave here. It says, "And now the spear throwers," the last two lines of page 586, "and now the spear throwers rose up to compete. Atrides, Agamemnon, lord of the far-flung kingdoms, flanked by Idomeneus, rough and ready, aid Meriones, but the swift runner Achilles interceded at once." So they haven't actually even thrown anything yet. The event hasn't even happened. "Atrides," this is what Achilles says, "well, we know how far you excel us all." So he's going to Agamemnon and say, "You're better than all of us at this event. We already know that. No one can match your strength at throwing spears. You are the best by far. Take first prize and return to your hollow ships while we award this spear to the fighter Meriones. That what that would please, if that would please your heart, that's what I propose." So he says, look, you don't even have to throw. We know you're better. All right. So I'm going to award you this award because you don't, you're the best of the best. All right. And then I'm going to give a prize to the actual winner of this who does participate in it. But we recognize you as being better than all the rest of us. And Agamemnon, the lord of men, could not resist. Achilles gave the bronze-shod spear to Meriones. And the winning hero, Atrides, gave his own prize to his herald, to Thebius, the king's burnished trophy. So all the stuff that's gone on between Achilles and Agamemnon is now put to rest. Achilles admits, "You're better than even I am at this, and you should be acknowledged for that." All right. So it's interesting how this plays out, and it's interesting how in this competitive nature of the Greeks, they do still find a way to sort of come together and let bygones be bygones, or to solve conflicts in the ways that they may not have the mentality to do so in the heat of battle. All right. So those are my thoughts on book 23. Stay tuned for book 24. I want you to read it. I want you to annotate it. Have some thoughts about it. Come back here and I'll give you my thoughts on it as we finish the book. And until then, and as always, happy reading.